One. All aboard. Welcome to the All Aboard podcast. I am your host, Brandon DeFreitas. We're here with another Dynasty version of our podcast, and we have a special guest for you today, Jon Baricelli. How are you doing?
What's going on, Brandon? Glad to be on the pod, and thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm honored, and I think that's the first time I've ever called you Jon Baricelli. I mean, to us in our home league, you're Jon B. And just to give yourself a little bit of an introduction to the PWC folks in the league and Ben and Jimmy, I'll let you take it away. I know we're high school buddies. We launched the league back in the day, but I'll let you cover all that.
Yeah, sure. I can just get a little bit into myself. So like you said, I'm not part of the PWC contingent, which seems to be the bulk of the league here. So I actually work for just a big pharma company in research and development, doing lab work. I'll just leave it at that. Don't need to get too detailed. Yeah, for myself and Brandon, we've known each other since, I don't know, elementary school or early middle school, and started our redraft league in 2006, I believe. So pushing 15 years at this point. And yeah, I'll pump my tires a little bit. So I've had some pretty good success making the finals, I think six or seven times.
That sounds right.
And I know Brandon beforehand was busting my balls about being the Buffalo Bills of that league, losing, I think, the first three championships I was in, and then finally broke through 3 years ago with Saquon Barkley leading the charge, hence the Saquon for Life username. And yeah, in recent years, I've had some good success making the finals 3 straight years, losing to Brandon 2 years ago, unfortunately, but at least I got the one championship under my belt.
So if Jon has something, a little bit of a Lamar complex when he plays against them, it's probably because that year in the championship, which was actually the last pod I think you joined, it's in the on the YouTube. I remember it was looking good for you until there was like a couple Lamar to Mark Andrews touchdowns that put it away, and you were like, this damn Lamar always goes off against me.
Yeah, I still have the PTSD.
Totally reasonable, but yeah, Jon's a shark in that league. He's got another strong team this year, so I believe you haven't just made the championship, you've been the top point scorer in a 12-team format the last 3 seasons, which is like crazy impressive.
Oh, yeah, appreciate it, bud. Yeah, I know, tough act to follow, but not to get too much into the redraft, but I started off 0-2 and rattled off 3 straight, so we're looking to get back again this year.
Yep. And most known for, I would say, if anyone's like, what do you think of Jon when you think of fantasy? I would say he's the mid-round receiver guru. And the last few years, I'll rattle it off. Jon in the mid-rounds. This year it was Mike Williams. So he's the guy, picked up Mike Williams. Last year, Will Fuller, he got in the mid-rounds. Year before, I think it was Allen Robinson and then Robert Woods. So he's been on a streak of identifying guys, I would say round 5 or later in the fantasy league, that end up being top 12 receivers.
Yep. Yeah, that's always my target. I know in the redraft, we have 2 flex spots, so I'm always looking to load up at receiver and plug in those guys when I can.
Yeah.
So that's definitely some of the bulk of my research during the off season.
Done it with a tremendous amount of success. So we're glad to have you in the dynasty. This is almost, like I said, this is my all-star fantasy league. We got the top 3 owners from that redraft, me, yourself, and Alex. And then we have the PWC Vampires group. These guys are battling it out. Every league with them is an absolute fight to the death. So it's good to have them. And then we got Ben and Jimmy there as well. So this is kind of like an all-star crew. It's going well. Now, we talked about your success in redraft. Both of us are struggling a little bit right now in the Dynasty League. Give me a state of the union on your team. Where are you at? What are you looking to do? And the best part about coming on these pods, Jon, is you have a platform to start talking about your trade block players,
I know. I remember last week we were thinking about the pod, and I was all ready to start throwing out some values for my guys on the block, but I feel like a lot of that's gone out the window. In terms of a quick state of the union, I mean, I'm not considering myself a contender for this year. I'm in 8th. I know I'm tied for Ben for the 6th slot. I'm just down in points 4, which I believe is the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
But just in terms of my points for, I think I'm second last in the league, which is always a pretty good indicator of where you really stand. And then just in terms of my roster, the injuries have just been piling up with, we'll get to some of my guys on the block, including Carson and Gallaudet specifically. But yeah, so I'm pretty shallow, starting the likes of the ghost of David Johnson and
Oh God.
young dart throws like Quez Watkins this week. So I really wouldn't consider myself a contender. I'm not looking to tear it all down and rebuild that way or anything, but at least try and accumulate a little bit of draft capital moving forward to have some flexibility.
Yeah, I don't think you're out of it this season by any means. I mean, you have 2 wins. As someone sitting 0-5 here, like I feel like I'd feel in it at 2 wins. And some of your pieces, I mean, you still have Murray, who's been, struggling lately, but CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, just a great combo for the future too. T. Higgins, maybe Rondell Moore gets more work. But like you said, I mean, it's tough. I know going into the year, you're like, my running back situation, I need to get more guys. Now you're starting AJ Dillon and David Johnson, Dynasty League special, and it's because of the injuries to Chris Carson and
Davis has gone by this week.
Yeah, so a little bit of a tough situation there at the running back position. So take me through. Let's go through your guys on the trade block. Try to help you out here in the market a little bit. I know Carson is on the block. He's got that neck injury he's dealing with. No one's really sure about what's going on. I think that's a fair way of summarizing that injury. What's your temperature there? Are you still selling, or is it like, well, I got to wait for this guy to get back because the value right now, who knows what it is?
I lean closer to that. Initially, the ask was a first round pick. Probably would have gotten the job done. I know I'm guessing most of the league isn't willing to throw that out there given the current injury situation you just laid out. I'm still open to offers. People can, if they want to try and buy low, with second round picks or just end of the bench type prospects, I'm always open for negotiation. So reach out anytime. Realistically, I'd probably be looking to wait it out a little bit, see if he can't rebound. And if he strings together a couple of good weeks, who knows, if a contender, maybe looking to shore up an RB2 or flex spot down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree. I think like pre-injury at first was a reasonable ask because you're talking, I mean, he's a top 15 running back when he's healthy, and that sort of player can help, a contender go ahead and try to make the next move into a top tier, especially when you have Edwin over there collecting running backs like their Pokemon.
Yeah, right. I don't know if we're going to get to him later, but like you said, I feel like he should start listening to some of the offers rolling in. I know I've inquired and sent out some, specific offers as well. So I'm sure he's gotten offers from myself. I'm guessing you maybe, and I think Ben said he's reached out to on the last pod. So Edwin, come on, man. Answer the door. Answer the door.
I think he's listening, but he's looking out the window right now. He's not answering the door yet. But who else is on the block on your team? I think Big Ben is on there. And I'm not sure.
Yeah, Big Ben. Big Ben is definitely available. He's I would say, kind of like you and Hamler, a best available offer. I figure he's still starting this year at least. And who knows if someone has a quarterback injury or just during bye weeks or whatever, he's still good enough where he's going to, I feel like, get you kind of league average quarterback production in your QB2 slot. So he's available. Yeah, I'd say best offer. It wouldn't take much to move him for sure. And then the others, Kenny Gallaudet was another one I put on the block and had this knee issue pop up. So I will say pre-injury, people might laugh me out of the room here. I was also leaning towards a first. The logic behind that being that Adam Thielen went for a first, who I agree in terms of production, at least this season, I'd much rather have Thielen. But I figure Gallaudet, he's still 27, so young-ish. He's under contract for 4 years, just signed a huge deal. So that's kind of the logic. I know it's kind of a crowded receiving room there, but I think he's still up there with Tony. I don't know if Shepard can really sustain this level of production, but I
Well,
just think he's still a young and pretty talented player.
to defend your take two there as the ask, he was a little banged up to start the year, and then he topped out at 92% of the snaps in week 4 against New Orleans, getting 7 targets, 6 receptions, 116 yards. So he was rounding into form before the knee injury too.
Yep, exactly. So obviously that ask kind of like with Carson. I know no one, or I don't know if anyone would offer a first before the injury. Obviously, right now, no one's going to be, I assume, offering a first, but kind of a similar situation with Carson, and even more so with Gallaudet since he's still young. Probably kind of a wait and see hold pattern. But again, anyone has any offers, feel free to reach out. I'm always open for negotiation.
And is Dallas Goddard still on the block? I know he was initially, but now that Ertz is gone, are you looking to hold Goddard and see if he can take that leap that we've all expected for years?
No, he's still very much available. I guess I can discuss. So I know Ben has reached out regarding Goddard. Pre-Ertz trade, I was asking for essentially a second and a prospect, something in that range. And right now, that would still be the ask. I mean,
the ask hasn't changed. That's very generous.
I mean, I guess I'd like to see a little more what the target distribution looks like now that Ertz is out of town.
Yeah.
So if people want to try and buy low, feel free. But I think his production has a chance to shoot up now that he's the rock solid number 1 tight end on that team.
Well, you all heard it loud and clear on the podcast. Window of opportunity to buy Dallas Goddard is still open at the original price. That is very intriguing. If I wasn't 0-5 and I needed a tight end, John, I would be sniffing. But unfortunately, I'm at the bottom of the tables here. I have Mark Andrews, so I'm just trying to wade through the season. But let's talk about our own trade a little bit. A couple of recent trades in the league. Seems like I'm driving the trade market, which is not surprising for you. You've seen me in the redraft. I'm always talking to everyone, trying to figure out what they want. And I think from my perspective, the Hamler trade, I was looking to open a spot and add Dearness Johnson as sort of like a cuff to Nick Chubb. I don't know if it's going to be beyond this year, but with Chubb and the calf injury, I was like, this is a player I should probably own in a deep roster. And I didn't want to drop anyone. We all know my obsession with John Ross. So instead of dropping John Ross, I was like, maybe Hamler's it. And I was like, let me ask around. I think I could get a draft pick for Hamler because he's a talented guy. He's got a lot of speed, a lot of quickness. And I was like, someone in the league might be willing to, I'll just take a draft pick for him. And you swooped in next year's 3rd rounder. I kind of think it's a win-win for both teams. I didn't want to hold and keep on the IR, and you're willing to hold and keep on the IR and buy a prospect at his floor. So is that generally how you felt about it?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this is my first year doing Dynasty, so I'm still kind of feeling out the value, valuation aspect of things. But my thinking is that once you get to the 3rd round of a rookie draft, you're kind of throwing darts anyway. I figure at least with Hamler, I have a sense of his play style, and he's an explosive burner type of player. Obviously out with an ACL this year, but he's still young. And I just question if I'd be I feel like it's just kind of a crapshoot what you're going to get at the 3rd round of a rookie draft. At least with Hamler, I know I like the player. We'll see how things shake out moving forward with the injury and the crowded receiving situation in Denver. But yeah, like you said, it's kind of a buy low situation. We'll see what happens going forward, but agree that it's a win-win. I know we're both kind of rebuilding, and whether it's a more draft capital for you or an intriguing receiver prospect for me, I think it makes sense for both of us.
Oh, yeah, totally agreed. And I want to clarify for the league too. I'm not going to pull a Danny Ainge. I'm not going to acquire all these, I feel like these 3rd and 2nd rounders are like the NBA equivalent of a non-lottery pick, where it's like, Yeah, I'm not gonna pull a Danny Ainge and load up the what was it, the Maine lobsters or the Red Claws. I'm not gonna load
The
up
Red
the
Claw.
Red Claws and make all these draft picks. I'm trying to like acquire assets that I can cash in and trades later. And I expect myself to be pretty aggressive because I'm expecting to compete next year. And probably, I'll make a draft pick, I'm sure, but definitely looking to sell some draft picks in the off season and acquire some talent to help me win. That's my ultimate goal. But yeah, that's the Hamler trade. And then I like to get your take. I also shipped out Dalton Schultz to Alex. We swapped third round picks this year since I have likely to have the higher third round pick, and then got a next year's second from Alex for Schultz, who I think is a good starting tight end. So what was your take on that trade?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I know for tight end, I feel like we're in similar situations with Young. Fitz is a little younger than Andrews, but
Yeah.
young, promising, or in Andrews' case, more in his prime tight end. So we're pretty set in that regard. So we're looking to deal off some of our tight end depth for whether it's draft capital or players or whatever. So it makes sense to trade Schultz. I guess my question for you is, do you think it would have been worth to hold on to him a little longer, see if he kind of establishes himself as a top 5 tight end like he's been this year, and see if you can get even more for him in 3-4 weeks or something?
That honestly, that could be the case, because right now he's what, like 3 or 4 weeks in. I don't think everyone's bought into him. Like, I don't even think Alex has bought into him as a top 6 guy yet. And you're right, there's a chance he could be that. Kind of the fun of dynasty too, like it could go either direction. It's a lot of fun with these trades, because like I feel like I got good value, but 2 weeks later I might be like, oh crap, what did I do that for?
Yeah.
But my thought process was being, we start one tight end, we have extra flex players, and I have a quality tight end. Didn't really want to start him in the flex, so it's like I felt like he had a little less value to me based on like the way my team was structured.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah, I guess we can be as deep as we want it as tight end, but I just feel like for the flex spots, the receivers or running backs realistically have more upside. So I don't think we want to be starting too many additional tight ends on a weekly basis.
Yeah, totally agreed. Well, we've entered, I'm going to call this the Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport part of the program. I obviously spend a lot of time going around the league, talking to people, talking about trades. So now I'm going to reveal some of the values I have talked about. Before I get into this segment again, like whenever we're talking trade, I'm just going to assume we're okay to talk values on the podcast to help grease the market. If you'd rather keep it confidential, definitely let me know. Otherwise, likely to go on the pod. It does seem.
Is this segment sponsored? Not sorry to interrupt. Is this segment sponsored by Ernie Bach Jr.?
Ernie Bach.
I know he's a frequent partner with the All Aboard podcast.
Yeah, I think he only partners our other redraft podcast, but that's Ernie Bach Jr., Route 1 on the Auto Mile, everything you're looking for. The Ernie Bach trade market values reveal. Sources out there are that Matt Stafford on Ben's team is available for a first round pick. I think a lot of this across the league, like even talking some of your trade, I think a lot of people are just trying to feel around the values of these draft picks. So I think if I'm Edwin, like I don't know if I give up a first rounder, but he's a team that does have a quarterback hole going forward, and I expect Matt Stafford to still be the guy there for a couple more seasons. So I think he might have a little bit more longevity in him than we're expecting.
Yep, agreed. I mean, Stafford's already off to a good start. I just feel like that situation with McVay and the weapons, he's in a spot to succeed, and he's under contract for what, 2 or 3 more years, and he's still youngish for a quarterback. So
yeah, 33 years old.
Yeah. So you should definitely have some time left and be worth, he's a valuable piece. So I get Ben asking, waiting out for what's the ask potential first round pick in that range. It sounds like maybe more. So I understand not wanting to just shove him out the door. Yeah, I feel like there are teams like Edwin, maybe Alex even, who I
Yep.
feel like has kind of a shaky quarterback situation who should be, really trying to push to make a deal.
Especially in a super flex. I mean, I feel like it's great to have three starters. And I don't know, even I asked around a little bit because I'm like, it'd be great if I could get, I know I have Watson I'm waiting for, but if I could get Stafford as like the third guy to mix in, I had a little bit of interest in. So I do think it's a fair ask and an interesting player. And I think the last point I'll make is like, I just don't think the Rams would trade, what was it, 2 first round picks, or I forget what they gave up, but it was significant. And I don't think they give that up for him if they don't expect him to be the starter there at least a couple more seasons in addition to this one.
Agree. I think it was 2 first-round picks. Yeah, I feel like it was similar to the Niners situation trading up for Lance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels like they're pretty invested in Stafford.
Mm-hmm. Other trade news that's come through my desk. There's been a lot of sniffing around Christian McCaffrey. I'm not the only one. Apparently, a lot of us have. I offered both my first round picks this season, was not enough. And been told that there have been a couple of offers with multiple first rounders for McCaffrey. It sounds like, I don't know how it would get done, but if it does get done, it's going to take a couple of firsts and a player. So that's kind of the market for CMC right now. And maybe if Jimmy, falls out of the playoff hunt, maybe one of the contenders goes all out and tries to acquire Christian McCaffrey. So I don't know if it's an affordable price at the moment. It certainly isn't for my team. I'm not competing this year, so I won't be making the move, but I'm hearing that's the current value on CMC.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I've personally been sniffing around myself and can confirm that the 2 firsts plus player, additional compensation seems to be the ask right now.
Yep. Well, I can see you were one of the other ones sniffing around there. I know myself, I'll say this for the league as well. I tried to make an aggressive move for Kadarius Toney this week. I watched him. I was like, I believe in this guy. I think he can generate separation. He's totally elusive. And I thought I'd shoot my shot, offered Travers first and Van Jefferson for Kadarius Toney, was rebuffed. So Jimmy's holding firm on his players. I can't blame him. And it does seem like he hit on Toney. So I thought maybe there'd be kind of like your Dallas Goddard situation where like you think the value's changed, but you're not fully sure of it yet. I thought there was maybe a last window opportunity for me to buy, and seems like it's a little closed at the moment.
Yeah, I think the Toney one's really interesting. Earlier in the week, you were telling me that first plus Jefferson offer, and I don't know. I think it's interesting from the other perspective because if Toney's a hit, then obviously you want to hold on to him and get as much to, have his peak years coming up. But it's also possible this was just kind of a 1 week flash in the pan, and I don't know, all the experts leading up to the draft thinking he can't cut it. Like maybe this was more of a one-off than what he really is situation, and it's a good chance to sell high potentially. But I can definitely understand both sides of the argument. At this point, I'm just waiting for you to offer your entire 22 draft for Toney.
I was feeling a little loose the other night, and I almost, we were discussing McCaffrey, I was like, do I offer my 2 firsts for Toney? And I was like, no, let's not do that. It crossed the mind, but it was not going to be offered. And I think that's really all the trade news I've come across. I know there's been a few things here and there. Anything on your end you've heard that you want to throw out to the east of the sphere?
Yeah, no, I feel like what I mentioned, I know for myself, I've inquired about Stafford and the Edwin RB horde. I haven't been able to make anything come to fruition, but those are some spots I'm looking at myself. I know we haven't talked about him yet. Rob Woods was also put on the block, who I feel like is an interesting kind of piece that maybe, like we were talking about with the competitors, if they're making a push and looking for an additional flex player, I feel like he's a perfect type of guy that could be worth trying to acquire close to the deadline.
He's similar to Adam Thielen, except that
Right.
Thielen started hot, so it was easier to trade at the time, and Robert Woods has started slow, has one good week, goes on bye. So it's like, oh no, he didn't go on bye, but he had one big week, and
Mhm.
actually don't know what he did last. Oh no, that was the game. That was the Thursday night. That's why I'm all messed up. Yeah, so he was great in the Thursday night. I mean, his percentage of snaps 77, 98, 88, 96, 99. Targets are 4, 9, 6, 6, 14. So I think he's still a wide receiver too to me in this format. And like you said, like if Ben's looking to sell off, I guess the current top player I would be targeting would probably be Robert Woods. I guess if Thielen went for a first rounder, I imagine that's the ask for Woods as well. Would you think the same?
Yeah, definitely. And I forget how old Woods is. I think he's a little younger, but agreed. I think of him similarly to Thielen, where he's kind of a piece you're looking to add, understanding it's a short term window and you're looking for more of the win now mentality.
I think it's interesting because, like, what if you did like a Godfather offer to Ben for like a Stafford and Robert Woods? I wonder what that would take, but you like get the stack back. And then, like, I know we're all like, Robert Woods is 29, I think Thielen's 31. So, like, Woods might have more in the tank than we think he did. He just signed a fresh contract with them
Yep.
going into last season, the 2020 season. So, I don't know. I'm not so sure that this is his last year as like the top guy there. And like I said, I've already shared, I think Stafford's got a couple more years there in that program at least.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I definitely think Woods is the most intriguing receiver on the block. Not to diss my own player here, but
Hey, I know I'm interested in Kenny Gallaudet, but I'm trying to buy the minimum of the market because I'm not playing for this season. So but let's jump into a couple movers in the power rankings here. We've talked about the RB horde. Edwin, who I believe was at the 5 spot before, has skyrocketed up to the 3rd spot in the power rankings. Released this morning. Mark's at 1. I think that's self-explanatory. We don't need to go into him a whole lot more. Actually, sorry, Edwin, we do have to go into Mark. 277 points last week. Like, this team is just ridiculous. I think he beat you with 125 the week before, and then he puts up 277. Like, holy crap, the upside there on that team.
I know it is crazy. I know I joked about it on a post the other day that there are going to be 9 sellers at the trade deadline, but that team's going to give a lot of people pause about making some win now type of moves.
I think the important thing about it is that, and going back to that 125 and then 277, I talked about it early in the season where I'm like, your upside is massive. Like if Brady, Evans, Brown, and even like Gronk, like if those are the Bucks that go off and score touchdowns in a given week, he's going to be untouchable. But like, look at what happened this Thursday. Another Antonio Brown goes off. Mike Evans does nothing. And then Brady doesn't get the touchdowns. Like, I feel like the range of outcomes is so big for him because he's so heavily invested in one team.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I feel like we can pretty much lock him into the playoffs, at least at this point. But once you're in that, one loss and you're out situation, if the Bucks have a down week, that could end up being something that does them in.
Yeah, I agree. And what's kind of scary for the future is like, in my head, I'm like, well, Mark's got aging players. It's eventually going to age out. But then, like, he's got Justin Herbert, who's going to be a stud for years. And he's got his new number 1 receiver. Sorry, Keenan Allen, Big Mike Williams. So I don't know. Mark could be someone to contend with for a little bit here. And at some point when he starts selling off, he could try to start a soft rebuild or something.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, he still has some good pieces. I know it. I just pulled up his team here now. But yeah, Brady's obvious. Well, we assume is nearing the end, but he still has Hopkins, who's fairly young. Yeah, Mike Williams is going to get paid, and it seems like I'd imagine by the Chargers, so it should be pretty solid for him going forward. And yeah, Herbert's going to be a good cornerstone for his team. So even though at some point, probably in the next couple of years, he'll have to start selling, he still has a great foundation.
I will say, I think the Titans just don't care about Derrick Henry's future. I mean, these carry counts, 35, 28, 33, 29 after
Yeah,
17
right. He's on
week
pace
one.
for 480 or something this year, which would smash the all-time record for
He's
touches.
he's not going to make it, and it's a 17 game season. Like his bye isn't until week 13. I know he's not human. He's 6'3", 247. Like he's a beast, but like not even Derrick Henry can take this, can he? Like I can't see this carry count continuing. And I know statistically we all look like clowns for fading him this year because of his workload last year. I'm still on the track. I'm doubling down. It's gonna hurt him at some point, whether this season or next. Like you just can't keep up that workload. I think it's irresponsible from Tennessee.
Yeah, it's tough. I was the Derrick Henry owner in redraft last year, and I was, like you alluded to, a little lower on him and kind of faded him in that format. Um, but I don't know, man. This year, I think he can keep it up. Next year is when I would be a little more concerned. But I was saying the exact same thing coming into this season, so we'll see how much he can, keep defying the odds at running back. But in general, I agree. At some point, it's got to catch up. Whether it's the end of this year or the next year or two, we'll see.
He's 27, but he has 5 years experience. So this is his 6th season. I don't know. It's not his age I'm worried about. It's always the workload on those tires. And I know he's so much bigger than everyone else, but like I said, I'm worried this season. I'm worried towards the end of this season. It's 17 games now. And I think they got to rest the big dog at some point, but they don't have that luxury. It's not a good team. And he's their only really, like AJ Brown hasn't played well this year, but I think he'll get it going. I'm sorry, Julio Jones is toast, people. Let it go. And yeah, no, they need him and they're gonna keep using him, but I'm a little worried long term. But again, Mark has a great team. He's dangerous. And like you said, I think a lot of the hesitancy to buy is even Ben last week is like, I can't compete with the top teams. It's like, yeah, I think you can, but maybe no one can compete with Mark when he goes off like that. And Brady and Herbert go off in the same week.
Yep, totally agreed.
So I mean, he's number one for that reason. John Canellis is going to come over to my house and smack me for not moving him down the rankings, but I think he's the tough luck team in our league right now. If you look at the points for, Mark's at 968, so he's on an island. But number 2 in points for is John Canellis at 863, but he's only 3-2 because he has a really high points against. So I think he's a team. I mean, he's got the Lamar and Aaron Rodgers stack. He's got great pieces, Eckler and Najee Harris. Like, I think if any team's going to take down Mark, it's going to be John. And I'm sorry to keep you high in the power rankings, buddy, but I just think he's still on another level to the next tier we're going to discuss.
Yeah, I just pulled up his roster and it is pretty filthy. Agreed. I think I'd have to go back to check out kind of the weekly breakdown, but I think he's just had bad luck because this is ridiculous. Lamar Jackson, we saw the upside last week. Same with Eckler. Najee's a top 12 running back. Cup and I mean Lockett's kind of a boom bust type player, but he's going to be an asset going forward. I think even with Geno Smith. I mean, it's just a great team. I agree with you. I think he's definitely in the mix, and I'd put him ahead of some of the other 4-1 teams who he might think are ahead of him, but I don't think are ahead of him in reality.
Oh, I agree for sure. And then finally we get to Edwin. Edwin deserves some respect too. He's at 794 points. He's really climbed up the board. He's being fiscally responsible with his running backs and his fab. He still has $90 left. But jokes aside, it's a strong team from Edwin. And I love his balance of this year and the young guys he's got on his bench. I really like what he's done. Clear fantasy footballer's listener. And again, I just look at his quarterbacks are the problem. We've discussed many times, Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz, Jimmy G, Matt Ryan. I mean, draft picks, they're valuable, but to me, Edwin has a chance this year. And if I'm him, you might even need to give up a draft pick. He could give up one of his running backs and try to sniff around the Matt Stafford bandwagon.
Yeah, I was just going to say that quarterbacks aside, he has one of the best rosters in the league, I think. But yeah, looking at Cousins and then Wentz or Jimmy Garoppolo and Matt Ryan, it's like none of those guys really scare me if I'm in the playoffs and up against him in that regard. So totally agreed. Whether it's, he's looking to divest some of his running back depth or give up the first or whatever it takes for Stafford, I think he should definitely be sniffing around, at least if he's looking to compete this year. But like we said with Mark's team, I'm not sure how many teams are willing to make the plunge on that with how deep and competitive Mark's been so far.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. What do you think of this? Like, he's not healthy, so this is a fly in the ointment. Say he was healthy. I don't know, maybe it's a complete hypothetical, but later in the season, Edwin ships off David Montgomery in a first-round pick to Ben for Stafford and Robert Woods. I don't know. What do you think of that?
It is interesting. I don't know if I'd be willing to give up Montgomery like that just because he is still young. I think he is talented, and with Fields, I feel like the Bears just want to be a run-heavy team, at least with Nagy. I'd imagine with whoever the presumably new coach is next year, I think they'd still lean towards being a run-heavy team. So I think Montgomery can have some value, and I'd understand the hesitation dealing him.
Yeah. I just something that came across, maybe a running back in a first. He gets the Ram stack. Try it. I don't know. Just a thought that came up. But Edwin's our big mover. We have Travers still at 4. I think he's hanging in there, and I think he's going to be there he's going to be in the playoffs. He's going to be one of the teams with a chance at the championship. Already bought in with Adam Thielen, who hasn't paid off for him yet, but still a quality player, still a guy who Cousins going to look for in the red zone. So I think he's still going to get value there. And then I think the surprise team that I always try to question, just because Alex seems to have a lot of luck in fantasy, but he's still, he's 3rd in the standings right now. So I can't have him any lower than 5th in the power rankings. And things are coming together for Alvin and the Claypools, I'd say. That quarterback room, like Daniel Jones looks legit. Sam Darnold is playing pretty well for him. And then he's got good pieces like Jamar Chase and Marquise Brown are surprising. So I don't think Alex is like, I kind of end that tier. I have the top 4 now, I would say. I don't know if you agree with that the Mellon, Canelos, Pimentel, and Travers. And then I think you have like the Alex Ben tier, the 5-6, before you get into the bottom of the league.
Yeah, I feel like those bottom 4 are kind of, where we both stand a little bit. I think that is kind of the low tier. I agree, even though Ben's record isn't that great, I'd put him in the middle above some of the weaker teams. But yeah, Alex has a really interesting team too. I know after the draft, we were talking about how he viewed pretty young and seemed like it was more of a draft looking towards the future, and agreed he could still use some quarterback help. But at least right now, I don't know, the way that some of these young players, Jamar Chase, Hollywood Brown, Claypool came on last week. I think the Schultz trade was good for him to shore up that position a little bit. I think he's in really good shape. So I don't know if I'd be looking to make any win now super splashy deals. I think he should at least be sniffing around Stafford, but if he can shore up the quarterback situation, either through a trade or the upcoming rookie draft, watch out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he's in a position to fully buy into this season. He's actually close to Edwin in points for too. But I like what he did with Dalton Schultz because it's a small buy. You're trading in next year's second. You shore up your tight end position and you give yourself even better chance. So I like what he's doing. I think he's going to make the playoffs and be in there in the top 6.
Yep, agreed. At 4-1, yeah, it's looking really good for him to make it at this point. And once you get into the playoffs, I feel like, as we all know, anything can happen. The best team doesn't always win.
Oh, for sure. So that's Alex. And then we have Ben, who's been on a little bit of a slide. He's still 804 in points for us. So I think it's more of some tough matchups he's been up against, but I think he's going to solidify himself as a playoff team. Still like the pieces there. I don't have a whole lot more to add on his team. I think it's going to be a lot better as the season goes on. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally agreed. I think I don't think he's as good as John's team, but kind of in a similar vein. I feel like his team has performed in points. The record just hasn't really reflected that yet. And I think, I would definitely put him in a tier above the 7 through 10 teams. And I think he's in a good spot to make the playoffs still. And like I said with Alex, at that point, who knows what can happen?
Well, I mean, you look at points against, there's only 3 teams in the 800s. It's Ben leading the charge at 837, and then myself at 823, and then Jimmy at 810. So I feel like he's just had the points against bad luck. It'll even out and he'll make a run at it. But it does sound like he's thinking about selling, and maybe that's just, a reaction to some tough weeks and definitely the Mark week last week. But I agree with him in the extent that, like, I don't know if I'd push chips in for this season at the moment.
Yep, totally agreed. I mean, this is probably the peak. Players like Stafford and Woods, this is the peak value you're probably going to get. So I understand the thinking for sure.
Definitely. Well, getting down to the basement division here. And it's funny because we have the basement, but records, like, I don't think the teams are that different. But then you have Tam and I at 0-5 leading the charge for the lottery. And then you have yourself and Jimmy at 2-3. I think Jimmy's got some good pieces. And you know what's funny? Every time I'm like, I look up players and I'm like, I should really make a deal for Kadarius Toney. Like, let me, like, who has Kadarius Toney? And then I like, who has Tommy Tremble? And I'm always looking these guys up, and they're all on Jimmy's team. And I'm like, it's just so hard to, like, we came to one deal for Denzel Mims, but I think what's hard is when you're a bottom tier team, like, it's difficult to make a trade with another bottom tier team because we're both at the end of the day looking to do the same thing. So I like a lot of his young talent, and I feel like he's got some bad injury luck. He has some pieces here too. Like, I love his receivers. Waller's going to get going. I could see Jimmy, challenging one of these teams to sneak into the playoffs, but I ultimately don't see him as a contender.
Yeah, it's hard to really. I mean, maybe me or Jimmy gets lucky and rattle off some cheap wins and can somehow sneak in, but just in terms of pure rosters, we're definitely in a tier below the other 6 teams, or at least one tier below those teams. But he definitely does have some interesting pieces, like you said, and obviously it's been bit with the injury bug a little bit. But those receivers are really good. Deontay Johnson seems like the #1 receiver in Pittsburgh, and I'll just call out AJ Brown as another one. He's really underperformed this year, but as a dynasty asset, especially, he's still really young, and what the upside is with him. I think he'll be great for Jimmy moving forward too.
No, completely agreed. And I'm going to come up with a new segment here, the must sell player of the week. And I'm looking at it, I'm like,
Kadarius Toney.
I wish it was Kadarius Toney. If Jimmy's not going to be a contender, he has to sell Jalen Hurts this season, because fantasy football, Jalen Hurts has been great. He's been fantastic. He's the #2 actually in this format. It looks like fantastic every week. But you know what? As an NFL player, I'm sorry. I know we all like Jalen Hurts because he's a gritty guy, and he had those moments at Alabama, and he's just not a starting NFL quarterback. And I know everyone's like, oh, it's too early to say that. Like, you watch these Eagles games and he looks bad. He looks really bad on the field. And to me, if I'm a team like Jimmy, where I personally don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be the starter there in Philadelphia next year. You already know they were sniffing around the Deshawn Watson pool. So they're looking to replace Hurts, I would say. And this is a piece that can really help a contending team, can really help a team that needs a quarterback this season and wants to make a run at the championship. If I'm Jimmy, I'm trying to sell Jalen Hurts for whatever. I don't know if I'd take whatever I can get, but, like, I'm selling him for sure this season.
I know both of us are on a similar page with Hurts. I feel like leading into the season, where, to your point, we weren't sure how sold the Eagles were on him as the long-term answer, and
Yep.
nothing he's done to this point has really changed that viewpoint. The fantasy production's been fantastic, like you said, but the Eagles are what, 1-4. Forget, they have a pretty bad record right now, so
Yep.
it doesn't look like they're going to be competing, and I think they'll be looking to upgrade the quarterback situation moving forward. I'd be curious to see if they'll still be sniffing around your guy Watson.
Yeah, I think that the Eagles officially pulled out of the Watson race recently. It's pretty much down to the Dolphins. And I guess we're in the bottom tier of the league, so that's probably the most interesting thing to talk about with my team is, when is Deshawn Watson going to be a usable piece? Because I don't think I can be a true contender until Watson's really there. And when I get Watson with Dak, I feel really good about being a contender in this league. I think there's an outside chance, and I'm sitting here as the Watson owner, so I'm biased, but there are rumblings that the trade market for him, with the Dolphins, could materialize by the trade deadline. And this is a scenario I laid out when I drafted him too. Like, he's not suspended. He just doesn't want to play for the Texans. And the Texans don't want to trade him because they can't get value. But if you look at it and you're the Miami Dolphins right now, first of all, your first round pick this year is probably looking more valuable than it looked before because they're not playing well at all. Tua got hurt, so I don't know. Maybe they give Tua a couple games, but I just think that team has some pieces, and if they had Watson, they could come back and compete. So with the Dolphins being bad, I could see them getting desperate and trading for Deshaun Watson, and that would be pretty big for my squad. Either way, like I said, I think at 0-5, it's too big a hole for me to climb back from. But I do want to use this platform to make it clear I'm not tanking. Like, I'm picking up Dearness Johnson. I'm going to try to field my best pot, and not the Dearness Johnson means I'm trying, but like, he's not a piece for the future, like I'm trying to pick up handcuffs and I'm trying to scratch and claw and get a win. Because like, who wants to just lose the whole season? It's a lottery anyway. I'm not going to actively tank. I think it's fine to trade away your players and get assets in return. Like, sort of like maybe I'll call it a subtle tank. Like, I'm not pushing chips in. I'm trying to get draft picks. But end of the day, I'm making free agent moves and I'm trying to win games because I'm here to win. I'm not here to tank and try to like do the hypothetical future. And I also feel like as the commissioner, I have to set an example while my team is bad. And I'm not going to be playing crap players, not trying to win. I'm trying to get my first W this week, hoping it happens, but did want to announce that on the podcast.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the right mindset. I feel like everyone in the league seems pretty competitive and is taking it seriously, which is great. And yeah, like a quote unquote subtle tank, like you said, it makes a lot of sense for the teams at the bottom like us, where it seems like we're not going to be competitive this year and we'd like to have good draft picks to improve our teams going forward. But we don't just want to be gifting teams wins. That doesn't seem like in the best interest of competition or just fun in the league.
I want to piss people off and
cost them great sentiment to push forward.
I want to piss people off and cost them bye weeks and like cause some havoc towards the end of the year. That's what I want to do.
I love it. Take knock Alex down a peg towards the end of the season, maybe.
Yeah, hey, that's definitely what I want to do. I think the last team, we've talked a lot about our team, so we can gloss them over. We just talked about Jimmy. Will Tam, and I've talked to Tam, and Tam has said the same thing. He's like, I don't want to tank. I don't want to go 0-17 or whatever, 0-16. So I know Tam really wants to win. He looks pretty good this week at it. And I mean, he's against me, and I'm without Chubb, Saquon, and potentially without Terry McLaurin. So it could be a good week for him. I mean, looking at this team, I still like some pieces here. I love TJ Hawkinson personally. Kareem Hunt is going to be a beast this week. He's got Trevor Lawrence for the long haul. I still like Will Tam's team. He's got Dobbins on the taxi. Like, it's going to happen for him at some point. It might just right now, the way it's gone, it's been a tough season for him.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, both of you are 0-5. Obviously, that's not how you want to start your first season in the Dynasty League, but you both do have promising players like you just laid out, and hopefully in the coming years, things will improve a little bit. And yeah, Dobbin, I feel like we haven't talked about that much in the previous podcast, but some of these teams, myself included, have some of the high upside IR running backs this year who are going to be available next year. So it will be interesting to see how some of those guys pan out and if they immediately slot into a top 24 type of running back role.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, John. We're talking about the bottom 4 teams, and Tam's the one with J.K. Dobbins. I have Deshawn Watson, which was kind of like, you're not getting value this year, and then you have Travis Etienne. And I think it's not really a surprise we're at the bottom of the league, because while I drafted Watson in the 8th, one of those teams at the top, TB12 method or, John Canelos, were probably loading up with impressive flexes in those rounds, So
Yeah.
like that's probably why, one of the causes of these teams being at the bottom. Those 3 players, I mean, we won't talk about Watson's legal troubles aside, but like, Dobbins and Etienne have injuries that they can recover from. They'll be 100% going into next year. I think the one guy I'm concerned about, and I think Mark has him, is Cam Akers, because we've never really seen a player come back from an Achilles tear and at the running back position, especially, and be what they used to be. So he's worth Mark does have him. He's worth holding, seeing what happens. But even at his age, it's going to be really tough to get your explosion back after an Achilles tear.
Mm-hmm. I know. I think when I took ETN, I want to say it was in the 8th. I believe all 3 of those, ETN, Dobbins, and Akers were still on the board, and Akers definitely gave me pause with that injury. But you never know. I mean, he looked good, so we'll see if he can get close to form post-injury. One other quick note on the toilet bowl. I know we've had some side bets going on for some of the previous showdowns. Anything on tap for this week?
We don't have anything for the toilet bowl, but if anyone listening to the podcast wants to make a bet, I mean, we can get some action going on it. It's going to be interesting. I don't think it's a 50-50 right now. Tam's at 150 projected. I'm at 140. I mean, I did have Khalil Herbert, who, nice little free agent addition, ends up, he's going to get a spot start here. But I mean, the fact that Chubb's out and he has Kareem Hunt is a kick to the nuts. And I mean, I'm starting DeAndre Carter, Van Jefferson. I don't know how to feel about the squad I'm rolling out there, John. I have a feeling I'm going to be 0-6 next week, but you never know what can happen.
All right. Well, maybe the odds makers here can come up with something and see if we can stir the pot in the league a little bit.
Hey, yeah, post to the message board. I can get some action going. Let me know.
Love it.
Well, it's been awesome having you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being a part of the league. I know everyone's excited. I'm glad you're in the trade market. Everyone heard your trade block prices. Maybe you'll hear something today, tomorrow. So I do like to. This just came across my head. Sorry for the little brain fart at the end of the show, but I like the trades going through automatically, because then like here, instead of having a voting period, like over the weekend, you can make a trade. You can make a trade like a half hour before game. So I really do like that element to our rules.
Yep, I love it too. Yeah, I like the, how things are instantaneous, and I do like just the, I feel like on the pod in previous weeks and just now this week, we're having at least a little bit of discussion on some of the, just the league rules and how we want things moving forward. So I think it's great to have that dialogue throughout the season.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, with that, John, thank you. Hang on a little extra. We'll chat on the side, but for all
Absolutely.
our listeners, thanks for listening. We look forward to seeing you next week. We plan to have a podcast, and reach out to me if you want to be the guest next week. So appreciate it all. Brandon DeFrance from the All Aboard podcast. We'll see you next week.